Hi, welcome to The Collectors. I'm Kent Lund, your host. In episode 1, we talked to Holly Goudie about her unique collection of squirrel-related items, actually recognized by Guinness in a world record. So now we're going to talk about the process of how you become recognized by Guinness and what's the process. Next on The Collectors. Okay, Holly, how did you happen to get involved with Guinness?
Well, one day my son came home and said, "You know, Mom, you could have a Guinness World Record." And I went, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, you've got enough squirrels." And being a school librarian for many, many years, I'd bought many copies of books to satisfy the interest of students at the schools.
Okay.
And I've looked at the books over the years, but I'd never seen anything about squirrels. Well, a lot of the records are really only online. So sat down.
The Guinness records.
The Guinness records.
Okay.
So they publish a book every year, but a lot of the records are online. So I went to Guinness World Records and Googled it, and a gentleman in Russia held the record for the largest collection of squirrel-related items with 1,103.
Oh, my.
And
were you surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised there was a record, period.
Right.
You know, it's,
like I said, there's somebody to collect everything,
yep.
Right?
So my husband and my both sons are like, "Mom, you have more than that around here." And if you look at my house, there's a curio cabinet where you see all squirrels. But they're not just everywhere. I have a lot of seasonal squirrels and clothing and things that are put away. It's not all out where you see it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start. And at points, people have asked me how many I have. Don't have any idea. A lot.
Right. Now, just 1 second. When you say item, like if you have a blouse or a jacket that has a squirrel, that's an item?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't sure at first as far as Guinness.
Yeah,
so I didn't even know.
What qualifies?
I didn't know. But I thought I'll start counting. So I spent an entire year photographing and counting my collection. So I started,
holy cow,
as I put away my ones that are out in the yards for the summer. I put them all together, I took a picture and counted. And then my fall decorations, my Halloween, my Thanksgiving, my Christmas, all the way through the year. And in between, I'd gather up like all my shirts and count them, or all my dishes. And I just kept building the count. As soon as I passed his number, my son's like, "Oh, you need to apply." And I said, "No, I want to see this process through." And it took a full year to go through counting everything. So I clearly had more than the man in Russia. But again, I didn't know would it all qualify or anything.
Right.
I'd looked a little bit. I'd looked at their questions and answers and things like that. Well, their criteria for a record varies by the record.
Okay.
Because people running fast or doing those types of things are very different.
Sure.
And
so there's categories.
Yeah.
Very strict categories.
Yeah. But even then for collection, so once I had counted and was sure I definitely had more than he did, though I didn't know if all my stuff would count. He predominantly had statues, where I have all types of things, and I didn't know if they accepted that. But I applied, and then when I got all my guidelines and criteria requirements, I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of work. The first hurdle was I needed 2 independent people, separate people, to come verify my count. And one of them had to be a zoologist.
A zoologist to count your collection of...
To verify.
Okay.
And I actually had a veterinarian lined up. And I thought, well, can I find a zoologist? And thought of a person that I was pretty sure a friend's daughter had gotten a zoology degree, and found somebody to and messaged that person. And yes, they did have a zoology degree, and yes, they would be interested in taking part. And then I knew another person who was an accountant. So that's another perfect person for counting things.
Yeah, I'll say.
So I had an accountant and a zoologist. So I had to create a detailed index listing. But then there were other criteria that started taking some of them out of my count. The squirrel had to be prominently featured. So, for example, I have a lot of greeting cards. I decorate a door with cards each holiday.
Yeah, okay.
And so, but like this card, it's not clearly and prominently a squirrel.
So you couldn't count it.
So I had other clothing articles and things that the squirrel wasn't prominent. So those went out of the count. Duplicates do not count. And there were things that I had duplicates of from people giving to me. When I was working, I had 3 different offices that I had squirrels in. People would give them to me at that location. I would put them at that location. So once I retired and they all came home, that got to be a problem. But I had a bunch of duplicates. So those couldn't be counted. Things that are paired, salt and pepper shakers, earrings, bookends.
One item.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had to be counted as one pair.
Okay.
So there were things like that. I hadn't been sure about how, even when I was counting, how do I count that? So I had to take out all those items.
So you have 3,000 items, but you might have 3,300 because you have duplicates or prominent items.
Yes, there were quite a few that were taken out. Okay. And actually on the side, even after I was done with the process, to this day I'm still finding some that were buried here or there around my house that didn't make it in the count. So that kind of happens. But there were quite a few that got taken out in the process. Couldn't be handmade, had to be commercially available.
Oh.
So I have a squirrel bouquet that the drama teacher made from left the props from doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So she took the props, made me a bouquet, brought it down, and that was always in my office. But it wasn't
commercially available. It wasn't
commercially available. So I had some items that had not been commercially available. So those got ruled out. So the biggest challenge was displaying all these items.
So that the accountant and the zoologist could count them.
Yeah. So
I guess that would be
This meant I had to have everything out at once.
And how'd the family feel about that?
Yeah, it was a challenge on many fronts. Every surface in my house was covered. When you go through, it was like just seeing everything. It was everywhere. We have a lot of I have a lot of the seasonal things. So like the birthday ones and all that. Yeah. We have 4 bookcases of books. We boxed up all of our books, not my squirrel books. We boxed up everything to clear all those shelves to display my seasonal stuff. The cars had to go out of the garage. We filled the garage. I mean, every surface in the house had to be used at the point we counted. It was a lot of work.
And so you set up a date with the accountant and the zoologist and said, can you come on this day because we're ready? And you had the tables out and you had the whole house covered with your collection. And they went around. How long were they at the house?
So it actually took me 2.5 months to stage this.
Wow.
Now, there were things like the biggest challenge were my Christmas ornaments. So I have like 300 of those. How do you put out 300 Christmas ornaments so they can be counted quickly? And if you even look at my image of all my ornaments, for weeks we were collecting. Anybody was getting rid of shelving, we took it.
Okay.
And
for extra display area.
Display area.
Right.
And a neighbor was getting rid of some plastic shelving that we could invert. And I could hang along the top edge and along the bottom then set the ones that stood. And when you look at the display, there's 10 in each row. So
Easier to count.
almost all my counting of my seasonal ones were in 10s or 5s or 15s. I arranged everything so it was very easy to count
Right.
and verify. It took 2.5 months to set up for 2.5 hours of filming.
Filming and counting at the same time?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
So there's a detailed record index.
Now, who filmed it? Did someone from Guinness film it?
Now, you can have Guinness come out.
Right.
There is a process, but with fees involved.
Okay.
And I thought, well, if I don't have to pay fees, I'd rather not.
Right.
So I did not involve them. They sent me my criteria. They would, I could ask questions. Like there were things like duplicates didn't count, but if they were completely different colors, I could count them. So I kept sending questions.
This is quite a process.
It was. And you would usually have to wait. Like even when I first applied, there was a delay before they sent me the criteria. At the end, when we submitted, it was months before we got an answer and stuff while they verify.
Wow.
So there had to be a detailed listing of everything with the count. The people verifying it had to verify that. In the long run, they actually had a higher count than I did because there were things like my nesting dolls I counted as a set. And my zoologist said, but really there's 5 and they're each a different species.
Oh, perfect.
I had another family of squirrels and they're like, well, no, those are 4, not 1.
Okay.
So their count actually came up higher than mine had. When we finished even, and especially being an accountant and stuff, we ended up with 3,399. And they're like, we need 1 more. And I'm thinking,
Well, not to be the record, but 1 more to round it up.
yeah, they wanted to round up the number.
Right,
They didn't want
sure.
it to be 99. And I said, well, that's okay because Guinness has the right to disqualify items.
Anything, okay.
That's clearly stated that it's up to their discretion
Okay.
in the long run. So I had to have the video footage of everything, but on top of that, we had to submit photos of every item. They could be in groups.
Okay.
So
You could shoot a wall of things.
yeah, as long as they were all clear enough.
Yeah, so you could tell they were individual
Yes,
and they were
yeah.
okay.
So now in the long run, I have a photo album of my entire collection
sure.
from doing this. So it was at their discretion that they could disqualify things. And there were things like wrapping paper. I expected them actually to disqualify, but they did not. They actually took our entire count. It all did have squirrels.
Do you have wallpaper with squirrels?
No.
We'll have to find some. We'll have to
Yeah.
find some wallpaper with
I
squirrels.
always find it interesting to try to find things I don't have. It took me a number of years to find an umbrella.
Okay.
At church one day, somebody said, well, do you have shoes? And I said, I have slippers, but then I had to find shoes.
Okay.
So when I don't have something, that kind of can become the challenge.
So Holly, let me ask you, you spent all this time, 2 months, and then 2 or 3 days of counting and photographing and so on. Is there any monetary reason to do this other than it may make your collection more valuable, or is it just the honor? And
No, it's just the honor. And for me, being a librarian
Sure.
and always doing my kids, there's a lot of kids that still like the Guinness World Record situation.
Okay.
And it's not in the book, but it's out there. It's an achievement. It was a lot of work. People ask me if somebody beats my record, will I do it again? And I say, no. It was a lot of work.
And it was enough. Yeah.
To have it all out. I got the record. We'll see how many years I have it. The man ahead of me had it like 9 years. So
Okay.
we'll see. I tend to, at points, will purchase certain ones to commemorate events or things. So
Okay.
I did purchase this one that says, I don't have ducks or a row, I have squirrels, and they're everywhere, because during this process, they were
Everywhere. The whole house, yeah.
the whole house. They were everywhere. But afterwards, it's interesting, some of the things that do happen. a man in Colorado was running an estate sale, and the woman collected squirrels. And he thought they should go to another squirrel collector. So,
That's a great, that's a nice thing for collectors to do too.
yeah. And so he looked up and found me online and managed to get a hold of me through my work location from a newspaper article that had been done, contacted me. But here's the trick. I already own 2/3 of these squirrels.
Oh, the ones in that person's collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
I already own them.
So how do you tell the guy, you know, I want these 5, but I don't want those 6?
I did that some. He sent me photos and I marked them up and sent them back. So that was kind of my largest. He sent me 32 of them.
Okay.
And one of the more unique ones was a feather with a squirrel painted on it. It was very unique. A lot of them were miniatures, which was good that they didn't end up taking up a lot of space, and even a little case that they were in, so I can display them in that case. So that was kind of interesting. One day I was in a restaurant with a friend, my former neighbor who's moved away, and she brought me this crystal squirrel, which I really like because it's so elegant, just like she is. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about the Guinness process a little bit. And the man nearby overheard us and came over and said, I'm sorry I was eavesdropping, but he had to take a picture with me. His father collects squirrels, and he wanted a picture of me and the squirrel for his dad.
This is opening up a whole new world.
It is. It is. It
Wow.
is.
Okay.
Both my husband and I have a good friend that if we go places, they always look for an opening to tell somebody I have a Guinness record where I'll usually wait and see. People will come up to me and talk about squirrels. I was in the Lego store the other day, and the person commented on my shirt I had on and telling me how much she likes squirrels. So there are people out there that collect them and like them. So even in my collection, I have a lot of. I was probably collecting for 20 years before I started collecting squirrel books.
Okay.
And I thought this was extra appropriate for all of this because it's the super duper collector. And the squirrel in this story collects things. And the items start taking over the house. And the brother complains.
And you didn't write this book?
No. So the family's just, they're out of room in their house because of the collection. So the squirrel realizes that it is too much and starts giving her collections away, but then starts another one. So it's about collecting. So I thought that.
And this is a children's book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the kids are getting a kick out of it.
Yeah. So it sums up the whole thing of collecting things, and it can be interesting to see people's reactions to the record or the squirrels.
So how long was it after you presented all your lists and your pictures and the people were there counting, and how long was it afterwards that they called you, and how do they contact you?
No, it was email.
Okay, an email.
It was in the summer, and we were out in Colorado. I think it was several months.
Okay.
It took a while from the point we counted to when we officially submitted due to all the photographing.
All right.
And then uploading those many photographs. The video was a challenge. Videoing it the whole thing was a challenge. You needed to record it in one take. And how do you do that with like a phone?
You got to lay out a walking pattern to go through the house.
The inventory count and the filming and everything all had to be in the exact same sequence. So yes, there was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. And you had to do it within 2.5 hours or then break and start the next day. You couldn't keep the people working that long.
Yeah. How long would they spend? How much time would they spend in a setting at your house? All day or?
Well, we did it in 2.5 hours.
Oh, the whole thing was 2. They did all that in 2.5 hours.
We did it in 2.5 hours.
Uh-huh.
So we used a GoPro.
Okay.
But then we had to break it into segments to submit it for the uploads and stuff.
Wow.
So that took a while. In the summer, we were out in Colorado, and we were having an outdoor picnic. And I said, kind of picked this spot thinking we'd see squirrels. And we hadn't
Planning your vacation.
and we
around it.
hadn't seen any where we were at this picnic table. And right as I said that, and we were just about done eating, a squirrel ran up to our table, up on the table, and came and sat right in front of me. And my son's like, "You're going to get your Guinness record." And I'm like, he said, "It's an omen.
Oh.
It's going to happen." And at 3 a.m, the message came in that night.
Because Guinness is in the
In
UK.
London, yeah.
London, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So it
I
was
didn't
an
know it
omen.
till the next morning, but it had come in during that night when I got up. I had the notification that I was accepted and now had a Guinness
Did
record.
you have anything on the table that might be attractive to a squirrel, or was
I mean, we were
was he
eating.
just sneaking in there to see if he could find something?
We were eating,
Yeah, okay.
you know, so
Wow.
showed up, came and sat right in front of us. So,
Gosh. Now on our easel here, we have the actual certificate
yes.
that you get. Then you have to pay for that probably.
They give you one certificate for free.
Okay. And everyone after that is,
I think $25, but
Okay.
they charge you for the frame, and that's not cheap.
yeah, framing's never is, and that is a beautiful frame, the way that's
So,
done.
and it made to fit it and stuff. So my husband's
About
like,
how long ago did you get this?
in 22.
Okay, 2022. Okay.
So I counted in 21. I didn't know till the summer of 22 that I had acquired the record for sure. But there was time in between there while we got
Okay.
all the prep work ready and submitted.
One of the questions I like to ask all collectors is, someday you're going to either decide, I don't want this collection anymore, or something's going to happen and you want to get rid of it or sell it or do something. What are your thoughts on what would you like to have happen to your collection?
Well, in the Guinness process, once my duplicates didn't count, right then I started, I
Selling.
thought, let's get rid of them.
Okay.
I tend to give stuff away.
Okay, all right.
So some of my friends came, there were people who came to visit the house while it was all out, because you don't see them all like that all the time. So I had a tray of duplicates and said, take what you want. So I first let my boys choose what they wanted.
Right.
But most of the people that came to visit took something then.
So that's your duplicates, but now what about the main collection, the winner?
Even since the Guinness ended then, there were a few. I had a really large one that it was okay when I was at work, and it could set up on file cabinets back in an office.
Oh, okay.
My house did not have space for it. So,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So then I ended up, I know a couple other people who collect squirrels. So
Okay.
I offered it up to
The
that.
whole network now.
Yeah. So I tend to give them away to other people who collect. If I have toys, kid type stuff, I have a friend who's a teacher and puts them in her prize bins for students, and the one.
Well, so it gets circulated and so
Yeah.
on.
So I tend to give them away.
Is there one in particular, or more than one, that have more value than others? Is there something really rare that's hard to find that other collectors are searching for, and you've got one, or anything like that you can think of?
I'm not so sure.
Okay, so you don't have a lot of money invested.
Some over the time. And
Well,
some
in
of
40 years, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I do have most of the collectible lines. I have 2 Yadros, and they're valuable.
what is a Yadro?
It's a porcelain figure.
Okay.
Porcelain. I have 2 of the
And where are they
squirrels.
made?
I'm not sure.
Europe, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Probably European, okay.
So I have a Precious Moments one. I have I have a, what's that German line? Anyway,
Okay.
Hummel. I have
Oh, Hummels, okay.
Hummel.
Okay.
So most collectible lines, a lot of them I've worked at having one that, once a friend said, do you have Polish pottery? And I said, no. Well, then I looked into that.
So you got some other pieces through that.
So I might have some that are valuable. I don't look at it so much as the value. When you say what should happen to it, I know several people actually at their funerals, if they collected something, they set them out and people can take one in memory of the person. I think that would be suitable. I think even recently we're starting to be aware as we age, we need to downsize. And I'm working at giving away more and
Sure.
thinning out the ones I'm not in love with. Because I have been given some that I might not have purchased, I wouldn't have purchased myself.
And you don't want to tell the person, thank you, but I don't really want that. Yeah, so you have to kind of
So,
be
and when I worked,
diplomatic.
I would just add it to the shelves at work or whatever. But
All right. Well, Holly, it's been a real education on how to work with Guinness and what you have to do and how difficult it can be sometimes to do that.
it was work.
We're very happy here at the Collectors that you came on our show to talk about your collection. And there's 2 episodes. The first one's about the collection, and then we talk about Guinness. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too.